Hey there everyone, and welcome to Bill's Retro Gaming Show. On today's video, I'm going to be taking a look at the latest release from Arcade1Up, Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Let's go, bub. So let me start out by talking about why I bought this cab, so you understand where I'm coming from as I go through this review. I did not buy this cab because I'm a huge competitive fighting fan. I bought it primarily because I'm a huge Marvel Comics fan, having grown up collecting comics most of my life. Now, this is a cabinet that I wanted Arcade1Up to do for a while now. In fact, one of the earliest videos I ever made was a wish for a Marvel Legacy cab that had all of the Marvel-based games on it. And I have to say, this machine comes pretty darn close to fulfilling that wish. Now, this cabinet was designed in the same style as recent releases like the Mortal Kombat 30th and Capcom Legacy. And while the style isn't bad, I still wish they'd gone with more of a big blue form factor for this particular machine. Now, I get it. They're going for a uniform style so that if you have those other machines, these will look like they all belong together. But still, I just feel like this one needed to be a more unique design. And speaking of which, I do like the side artwork on this machine. And yes, I know it doesn't mimic the arcade, but let's face it, most of these units were conversion kits that went into other machines anyway. The marquee on this looks great. It's well lit with no hotspots that I can tell. And yes, if you get up super close and look real hard at it, you can notice some pixelation in the graphics. But to me, that's just nitpicky. The control panel, however, I have to admit, I'm not a huge fan of. While the layout's fine, and I like the fact that it's tilted down slightly, which makes it more comfortable to play, I'm not thrilled with the design they used. I really wish they'd gone with the steel diamond grid look instead. This one just feels a little out of place to me with the rest of the cabinet. Now, I will say the joysticks feel nice when playing, and the buttons, while serviceable, are the usual Arcade1Up quality. Now, I know many of you who are more serious gamers, especially in the fighting community, are probably going to want to upgrade them. The molded coin door is a nice touch that gives it more of a real arcade look and feel. And yes, this is a 3/4 cab, so it does have a riser. And while I like the Marvel vs. Capcom 2 logo on the front, I wish they'd extended the artwork on the sides into the riser instead of just putting the same logo there as well. The monitor is the same 17-inch BOE monitor that's been used in other recent releases. Luckily, they seem to have gotten away from those awful TN monitors and their horrible viewing angles. This one looks great no matter where I happen to be standing. The volume control on this machine has some issues. First off, it seems to go from barely audible to ear-blowingly loud very quickly. Now, there's no way I would ever have this thing set to the upper limits of the volume slider. Also, there's a weird hiss that seems to happen after the normal movement sound as you move around the main screen. Before I go on, I just want to take a quick second and talk about how this machine came packaged. Now, I bought this from Best Buy, and it was delivered to my home by UPS. When it arrived, I didn't notice any significant damage to the box. And while Arcade1Up has done a pretty good job lately with packaging, they need to improve how they package the side panels because mine came with a tear in the artwork. Now take a look at this picture. Now, luckily this is on the part of the panel that gets covered by the control panel side pieces, so no one will see it. But I'm not the only one who's had these issues. And had this been in a more prominent location, I might have even considered returning it. Alright, so let's move on to the games list. I said in the beginning of this review that this cabinet fulfills a wish I had for one that had all of the Marvel arcade games on it. Almost. While I am very happy with the games list, there is one glaring omission that I'm disappointed didn't make the cut. Now, the games on this cabinet include the marquee title, Marvel vs. Capcom 2, along with Marvel vs. Capcom, Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter, X-Men vs. Street Fighter, Marvel Superheroes, X-Men Children of the Atom, and 2 console-based games, X-Men Mutant Apocalypse and Marvel Superheroes War of the Gems. Unfortunately, the one big game missing from this is the side-scrolling beat-em-up, The Punisher. Now, it seems like this may have actually been a licensing issue, with Disney not wanting this game to be released anymore. but it's still a shame to see it's not included on this machine. If that game had been on this, it would have been a perfect games list. And yes, there are two other Marvel arcade games out there, the X-Men arcade game and a Spider-Man arcade game. But those were developed by Konami and Sega, respectively. So the idea of them being on this was always a long shot anyway. Each of the games except the two console-based games have their own settings. Here's a quick look at the settings for each of the games.
Marvel vs. Capcom. Marvel vs. Capcom.
All of the games on here, except for Marvel vs. Capcom 2, have appeared on other cabinets from Arcade1Up, and for the most part, they all seem to play fine. When the cabinet was first released, there was some crossplay issue with the original Marvel vs. Capcom game and other cabinets, but that seems to have been fixed with a recent patch. But let's talk about the main game and the main reason people want this one, Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Now, first off, the most glaring issue is the fact that this game does not, at least at the time of this review, have online play enabled. And at this time, we have no idea when that will actually happen. Even in a recent video from Arcade1Up, they couldn't give any time frame for when this would occur. In fact, they made it sound like they hadn't even begun testing this feature yet. Now, to me, that's a huge misstep and one that anyone considering buying this at this time should take under consideration. Now, as for the offline experience, to me, it seems to play okay. I know people have complained about input lag, but if there is any, I really couldn't notice. Now, for those of you who are really serious competitive fighter fans, maybe you'll notice it more than I did. Apparently, that's something they're continuing to work on, though. Now, I did notice once or twice while playing a slight freeze to the gameplay, but nothing I would call game-breaking. Again, you may feel different about that, though, so I want to mention it. And there does appear to be some audio stutter in the main character selection screen. And finally, there's also this weird issue where, while playing, the volume will lower on its own. Again, this only seems to happen in Marvel vs. Capcom 2, as I haven't had that happen in any other game, so hopefully that's something they can figure out and patch as well. So yeah, the game has issues. But if I'm being honest, has that taken away from my enjoyment of it? No, not really. Now, I brought up all these issues with this game because, A, they are real issues, and I don't want to diminish them. And B, as consumers, we have a right to know what we're getting into before we buy something. But all that aside, for me personally, like I said, it hasn't taken away from my enjoyment of the game. I hope at some point they get addressed, but for me personally, nothing here is a showstopper. Now, again, you may feel completely different, which is why I mention all of this, because I want you guys to have the clearest picture possible regarding this cab. Now, I do feel online play will come at some point. It's just a matter of when and how good it is. I'll most likely do an update to this video whenever that happens. So before I wrap up this video, I do want to bring up just one last thing. And this actually has nothing to do with the Marvel vs. Capcom 2 cab itself, but rather with the way Arcade1Up has handled its release. Now, I haven't been following them long enough to say if this is the worst release they've ever done, but in my estimation, it was pretty bad. From the start, they produced false fear in people's minds that they would not be able to get this cab if they didn't pre-order it right away. On top of that, they opened up pre-sales early and screwed up people who were waiting to purchase it day one. And it just kept getting worse as time went on and they had a second round of pre-orders. And now, people who ordered them early are having to wait until December to get them while others have received them already. It's a huge debacle that Arcade1Up really hasn't done anything to address, which unfortunately doesn't inspire confidence that they've learned and will do better in the future. Time will tell, but it's something to keep in mind when deciding whether or not to buy one of their machines going forward, especially as a pre-order. But I'm going to leave it there. That's going to do it for this video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to click the like button and leave a comment below. Let me know your thoughts on Marvel vs. Capcom 2, and of course, if you haven't done so by now, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.